So ask yourself this, are you properly insured? And today we're talking specifically about the case of flooding in your home. Have you considered it? Is it part of your normal policy? Let's delve into this with Andy Crouppen of the law firm Brown & Crouppen. Thanks for stopping by, Andy.
Thanks for having me.
This is an interesting issue because I think a lot of folks just assume when they get that walloping homeowner's policy that flooding is covered in there, and it ain't necessarily so.
It is not so. In fact, probably about 20% of people who need flood insurance are actually covered by flood insurance.
That's not a good number.
No, it's not. You and I have one definition of flood. The insurance companies have a little different definition of flood. To us, flood is any water that's where it shouldn't be is a flood. To your homeowner's policy, water that comes from inside your house, a pipe bursts in the winter, causes a flood, that's generally covered. But what happens is if it comes from storm water or a sewer backing up, something that comes from outside your house is generally considered a flood and is not covered by your homeowners. That's what you need flood insurance for.
So as you mentioned, pipe bursts in the wintertime, your homeowner's policy is probably going to cover it. Check to be sure. Water heater corrodes out and starts leaking. But when water starts coming in through the well windows or seeping through the walls, how are you supposed to cover that damage if your homeowner's policy doesn't do it?
Well, it gets tricky. When Hurricane Katrina came through, it was sort of, I don't know if it's a loophole, but a lot of people were surprised to find out that they had hurricane insurance. That hurricane blew down a wall, which was covered, but then the flooding came in, and that's what actually destroyed most of their homes. So while
they wasn't covered.
Right, they got a brand new wall, but nothing else.
That's great.
Here's how you protect yourself. Flood insurance is generally sold through your traditional insurance carriers and the agent you use to buy the rest of your insurance. However, ultimately, it's sold via brokers, but it's through the federal government. Not everyone is qualified for it. It's sort of a community-based decision. I think what the federal government wants to see is they want to see communities come together saying, okay, we would like our community to be eligible for flood insurance. And what it does is it prompts these communities to make decisions in their zoning laws that sort of prevent flood damage. For instance, in some communities, you'll see all the houses are on stilts. That's probably not just because the people are smart, but because the zoning requires it, and it makes them eligible for flood insurance.
So your local community has a sort of opt-in, for lack of a better phrase, and then you've got access to this federal insurance.
Right.
Cost is going to depend, I guess, on what kind of flood zone you're in. If you're in an area that floods a lot, it's going to cost you more. It's
going to be worse. The federal government kind of goes through and determines the risks, and I think then the prices are set through that. Now, sometimes when there's a huge natural disaster, like in Hurricane Katrina, there were a lot of people who didn't know this, didn't have the proper insurance, and then FEMA sometimes steps in and just doesn't leave a whole city homeless. They step in and will sometimes cover you for the damage you incurred due to a flood. However, that's not what you want to rely on.
No, because the moment you bank on that is the moment that it's your house and the one right next to you are the only ones that get flooded, and the federal government's not going to make a beeline for
If just two more houses were flooded, you'd be getting that new home theater in your basement.
Eligible. Andy, good stuff. So just start with your local insurance provider and see what they suggest for you, I guess.
Exactly.
Okay, very good. Better to have it and not need it than the other way around.
I think so.
Sure. If you have a legal question for Brown.